what I do is I create test suits for every quality risk category that I have defined in my risk analysis. Idea is that I must have at least one test suit for one category. I can have more than one test suits. As you can see, quality risk category 3 is being tested by test suit 2 and test suit 3, while as test suit 1 is only testing quality risk category 1. So these arrows not only check that all the quality risk categories have been covered and my test coverage is complete, they are also giving you a relationship between test suits and quality risk category, which is typically a traceability forward as well as backward. At the low level test design, little simpler and little confusing. Now for every sub risk category that I have identified, I must have at least one test case which is covering this quality risk category. So you can see 1.1 is being covered by 1.1, 1.2 quality risk category is being covered by 1.2 and 1.3. Same goes for quality risk category 1.3, which is being covered by 1.4 and 1.5. So a test case can either cover one quality risk category, a test case can cover multiple quality risk categories, and a quality risk category can be covered by multiple test cases as well. Now again, if you have this kind of relationship with all the risks, you make sure that everything is being covered by the test cases that you have created. Now you can replace this quality risk category with anything. For example, you can replace it with your requirements, and you have to make sure that all the requirements are getting covered by the test cases. Or you can have all the consultations that have come in, all the assumptions that you have created for your software. You write all those assumptions here, and you make sure that these assumptions are getting covered by test cases. There should not be a single risk or single requirement or a single assumption which is not getting covered during your low level test designing, which typically becomes your implementation phase. So I talk about risk. So let's go a little into this risk and see what this risk is. Risk basically is the possibility of something going bad. I go on the road, I'm driving. Risk is that I might meet with an accident. Now based on my experience with risk, I can mitigate risk, or I can sometimes play with the risk given with my experience. For example, when I started driving, that was way back sometime in 1991, my risk of hitting others on road was very high, and I was a risk on the road. With the passage of time, with the experience, that risk of me hitting somebody else has gone down. Okay, this is one thing. So I have almost mitigated that risk. Now I have enough confidence, enough experience that I will not hit others. But that doesn't mean when I'm riding a bike today, I should not wear a helmet. So I was wearing a helmet in 1991. I wear a helmet these days as well when I'm riding a bike. That means the risk of meeting an accident is still the same. So even with the experience of almost 20 years of driving, that risk has not mitigated yet. So that that is a risk which will always be there till I drive. So what this means? This means there are few risks which you mitigate with your experience, or when you understand these risks and how to come out of the situations, but there are few risks which are always there. So for me in software, one of the biggest risks is that it will fail to satisfy customers or fail to satisfy end users or stakeholders, and you don't get your money. Simple as that. Okay. So why I am talking about this risk-based testing? Typically because the lesser the risk you have, the lesser surprises you will have when you will release your product. So when you identify and assess risk, this will help you in guiding test process. Knowledge of risk will help you answering key questions. Risk, if you have identified all the risks, what you will have is basically to identify all the different risks. You will involve different stakeholders in your project. For example, your project managers, delivery managers, sales and marketing guys. You will also have to involve a lot of end users probably sometimes. So the more stakeholders or more cross-functional teams you have on the project, the more risks you will cover. and finally end product will be much better. Risk-based testing also becomes part of a broader risk management approach, and these days risk management approach is taking there has been a lot of talk on risk management approach in software testing these days. How we analyze risk? The first is a very informal way. So whatever the quality risk categories you can think of, functionality, security, reliability, usability, efficiency, maintainability, data quality, error handling, and anything you can think of, put it under a risk, and you have identified all the risks. Make sure that cross-sectional people come and follow that. Or you can use a little formalized approach, which is say ISO 9126, which talks about 6 main quality characteristics and then sub characteristics. For example, ISO 9126 broadly talks about functionality, reliability, usability, efficiency, maintainability, and portability, the 6 major characteristics. And then you have different key sub characteristics that you can test your system with. So if you're following say ISO 9126 approach and you cover these 6 characteristics, you can say my system is good quality product based on ISO 9126. Or you can also use something known as failure mode and effect analysis, which has definitely come from manufacturing and is one of the best ways to find risk and how to prioritize your testing with risk. Let's see this with an example. Let's talk about a banking system. Let's say I have a kiosk where people can pay their bills, and I have say 2 modes by which I can pay my bills. One is cash mode and another is credit card or debit card mode. So what I do is, instead of risk 1 I write cash, instead of risk 2 I write credit card and debit card. Now you can see further columns which are talking about technical risk, business risk, risk priority number, extent and tracing. Let's see them one by one. Technical risk is likelihood of the problem. For example, to say it in very common words or naive words, technical risk is how difficult it is for me to create a system which will ensure that this risk doesn't happen. Now you see, if you're a global traveler, you will find that identifying any currency note is very, very difficult, and there are still systems or scanners which are not good enough to scan a valid currency note and a counterfeit currency notes. So say my risk 1, which was cash, my technical risk or my likelihood of the problem is very, very high. Now you can see if my technical risk is very high, I will write number 1 there. Okay. And if my technical risk is very high, I'll write 1. If my risk is very low, I'll write 5 on the scale. So on my technical risk for cash, say I write 1 here under the technical risk column. Let's talk about credit card and debit cards. The technical risk involving credit card and debit card, I don't think is very, very high. You might have swapped your credit cards and debit cards hundreds and hundreds of times at different malls, machines, and you can see these swapping machines. So I already have systems which will help me in, I can buy a system, COTS kind of system, commercial off the shelf system, and I can install it in and I can use it. So my technical risk of credit card and debit card is very low. So I can write 5 here. Business risk is impact of the problem. So if this risk happens, what will be the impact on the business or on the stakeholder or on the end user? Any of it fails, either cash or debit credit card, my business takes a direct hit. So my risk is very, very high, whether it is cash or credit card and debit card. So my business risk for both the categories become 1 and 1. Risk priority number, I simply take the aggregate measure. So I simply multiply technical risk and business risk. So for the first case, my RPN is 1. For the second category, my RPN is 5. Now, this risk priority number will identify my prioritization of the testing. For example, if I have a number between 1 to 5, I will do extensive testing.